You're keeping it. Tyler's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Elena pressed her hand against her stomach, feeling the life growing inside her. Yes, she whispered. He grabbed his jacket from the chair. Then you're on your own. The door slammed. She stood there, 28 years old, pregnant, abandoned, staring at the wall where his picture used to hang. 3 weeks later, she would trade everything she owned for a rusted helicopter that hadn't flown in 30 years. Everyone in Cedar Falls said she had lost her mind. But Elena Brooks wasn't buying scrap metal. She was buying her dead father's unfinished dream. And what she built from that broken frame would change everything. Subscribe to this channel and stay with me until the very end of this story. Comment below the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story has traveled. The pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines on a Tuesday morning in March. Elena Brooks sat on the bathroom floor of her Denver apartment, knees pulled to her chest, hands trembling. She was 28 years old. She worked as a receptionist at an insurance company. She made $14 an hour. And the man who had promised to love her forever was asleep in the next room, unaware that their lives were about to change. She didn't wake Tyler immediately. Instead, she sat there for almost an hour, running her fingers over the plastic stick, trying to understand how she felt. Scared, yes. Overwhelmed, absolutely. But underneath all of that, something else was stirring. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. When she finally walked into the bedroom, Tyler was already awake, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up. "Hey," Elena said softly. "I need to tell you something." "Can it wait? I've got that meeting at 10. "No, it can't wait." Something in her voice made him put the phone down. He looked at her, then really looked, and his eyes dropped to her hands, to the test she was holding. "Is that what I think it is?" Elena nodded. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed lasted exactly 4 seconds. She counted them. 4 seconds before Tyler's face shifted from confusion to understanding to something cold. "How far along?" "I don't know. Maybe 6 weeks. I need to see a doctor." Tyler swung his legs off the bed. He rubbed his face with both hands. "This wasn't the plan, Elena." "I know. We talked about this. We said not until I got the promotion. Not until we had more saved up. I know what we said." "Then how did this happen?" Elena felt something harden inside her chest. "How did this happen?" "The usual way, Tyler." He stood up, pacing now, running his hands through his hair. "We need to think about this logically. We're not ready. Neither of us is ready." "What are you saying?" Tyler stopped pacing. He looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. Calculation, self-preservation. "I'm saying we have options." "Options? You know what I mean." Elena's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. "I'm not doing that." "Elena, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. This is a baby. Our baby. It's a cluster of cells. It's not a baby yet." "It's my baby." Her voice cracked. "And I'm keeping it." Tyler stared at her for a long moment. Then he walked to the closet and pulled out a duffel bag. Elena watched him start throwing clothes into it, her heart pounding. "What are you doing?" "I need space to think." "Space, Tyler, we need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. You've already made your decision." "Because it's my body. My choice." Tyler zipped the bag with a violent motion. "And it's my life. My choice, too." He walked past her toward the door. Elena grabbed his arm. "Where are you going?" "To Marcus's place. I'll call you in a few days." "Tyler, please, don't do this." He looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face. "You want to be a mother so bad?" "Fine. But I never signed up for this. I'm not ready to be a father." "So you're just going to leave?" "I need time." "How much time?" Tyler didn't answer. He pulled his arm free and walked out the door. Elena heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard the front door open and close, heard his car start in the parking lot below. He never came back. The first week, Elena called him 17 times. He answered once on the third day, just to tell her he needed more time. After that, his phone went straight to voicemail. The second week, she stopped calling. She went to work. She smiled at customers. She answered phones and filed paperwork and pretended that her entire life wasn't collapsing around her. The third week, she came home to find an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a letter from Tyler's lawyer. He was willing to terminate parental rights. He would not be seeking custody or visitation. He wished her well. He wished her well. Elena sat on her couch holding that letter and felt something break inside her. Not her heart. She had expected her heart to break. This was something deeper, something foundational. The belief that she could trust another person with her future. That night she called her mother for the first time in 3 months. Grace Brooks answered on the second ring. "Elena, what's wrong?" "How do you know something's wrong?" "Because you're calling at 11 o'clock on a weeknight. What happened?" Elena told her everything. Tyler, the pregnancy, the lawyer's letter. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Elena thought the call had dropped. "Mom, are you there?" "I'm here." Grace's voice was thick with emotion. "I'm just trying to decide whether to cry or get in my car and drive to Denver to hunt that boy down." Despite everything, Elena laughed. "Don't do that. He's not worth the gas money." "Baby girl, I'm so sorry." "I know. What are you going to do?" Elena looked around her apartment. At the furniture Tyler had picked out. At the pictures they had hung together. At the life she had built around a man who had vanished like smoke. "I don't know yet, but I can't stay here." "Then come home." "To Cedar Falls, Mom, there's nothing for me there." "There's me. There's your father's memory. There's the place where you learned who you were before Tyler convinced you to be someone else." Elena closed her eyes. "I haven't been back in 5 years." "I know. But maybe that's exactly why you need to come." It took Elena 2 weeks to pack up her life. She gave notice at work. She sold the furniture. She terminated the lease. Everything she owned fit into the trunk of her 10-year-old Honda Civic with room to spare. She was 7 weeks pregnant when she drove out of Denver for the last time. The drive to Cedar Falls took 9 hours. Elena stopped twice to stretch her legs and once to throw up in a gas station bathroom, the morning sickness hitting her like a wave. She ate crackers and sipped ginger ale and kept driving. Watching the mountains give way to plains, the plains give way to the endless sky of Montana. Cedar Falls hadn't changed. The population sign still said 2847, though Elena suspected that number was generous. Main Street still had the same hardware store, the same diner, the same general store that had been there since her grandfather's time. The only new addition was a Dollar General at the edge of town, and even that looked like it had seen better days. Grace was waiting on the porch when Elena pulled into the driveway. She looked older than Elena remembered, smaller somehow. But her arms were just as strong when she pulled Elena into a hug that lasted 3 full minutes. "You're too thin," Grace said when she finally let go. "And you look exhausted." "I'm pregnant. Exhaustion is apparently part of the package." "Come inside. I made soup." They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Elena had eaten breakfast every morning of her childhood, and Elena told her mother everything she hadn't been able to say on the phone. About the loneliness, about the fear, about the anger that sometimes flared so hot she couldn't breathe. Grace listened without interrupting. When Elena finally ran out of words, her mother reached across the table and took her hand. "Your father would have killed that boy." Elena smiled sadly. "Dad would have killed him just for being from California." "That too." Grace squeezed her hand. "But you know what else your father would have said?" "What?" "He would have said that baby is a blessing, that everything happens for a reason, that God doesn't give us anything we can't handle." "Do you believe that?" Grace was quiet for a moment. I believe that your father loved you more than anything in this world. I believe that he spent 20 years building something in that barn because he wanted to leave you a legacy. And I believe that you are stronger than you know. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I don't feel strong. Nobody does. Not at first. Strength isn't something you feel. It's something you do. That night, Elena lay in her childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling that still had glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to it from when she was 10. Her hand rested on her stomach, on the tiny life growing inside her. I don't know how to do this, she whispered into the darkness. I don't know how to be your mom, but I'm going to try. I promise you that. I'm going to try. The next morning, she woke up early and made a decision. She needed to see the barn. Her father's barn sat on the edge of the Brooks property on land that Grace had sold 4 years ago to pay medical bills. Elena hadn't known about the sale until it was done. Her mother had never told her how bad things had gotten financially after Marcus died. The property belonged to Walter Crane, now a rancher in his 70s, who had known Marcus Brooks since they were both young men. Elena drove out to his place, not sure what she would say or what she was even looking for. Walter was fixing a fence when she pulled up. He squinted at her car, then his face broke into a wide smile of recognition. Elena Brooks, as I live and breathe. Hello, Mr. Crane. Mr. Crane was my father. Call me Walter. He wiped his hands on his jeans and walked over. Your mama told me you were coming home. Said you're expecting. Elena instinctively touched her stomach. Word travels fast. This is Cedar Falls. Word travels faster than light. He studied her face. You look just like your daddy. Same stubborn jaw. I'll take that as a compliment. It was meant as one. Marcus Brooks was the most stubborn man I ever knew. Also the best. Walter gestured toward his truck. You here to see the barn? If that's okay. More than okay. I've been hoping someone would come looking. He grabbed his keys. Follow me. The barn looked exactly as Elena remembered. Gray wood weathered by decades of Montana winters. A roof that sagged in the middle. Doors that had to be forced open because the hinges had rusted. But inside, something unexpected was waiting. Phoenix. Her father's helicopter sat in the center of the barn, covered in tarps and dust exactly where she remembered it. Elena pulled back the tarp and felt her breath catch in her throat. The fuselage was pitted with rust. The skids were corroded. The rotor blades sagged like broken wings. But it was still there, still whole, still waiting. I couldn't bring myself to scrap her, Walter said softly. Your daddy spent 20 years on this bird. Felt wrong to let her go for salvage. Elena ran her hand along the helicopter's side. He used to bring me out here every Sunday, let me sit in the cockpit while he worked. I remember. He'd tell anyone who would listen about his girl, how smart she was, how curious, how she was going to fly this thing someday. Elena's eyes burned with tears. He never finished it. No, but he never gave up either, not until the cancer took him. Walter reached into the cockpit and pulled out a leather-bound book. He left this inside, asked me to keep it safe until someone came looking. Elena took the book with trembling hands. Her father's handwriting filled every page. Diagrams, calculations, notes, and on the first page a message. To whoever finds this. If you're reading these words, maybe you're brave enough to finish what I couldn't. Phoenix isn't just about flying. She's about reaching people when no one else can. She's about proving that broken things can rise again. Build her. Fly her. And remember that the sky doesn't care how many times you fall. It only cares if you get back up. With love, Marcus. Elena pressed the book to her chest and sobbed. Walter stood quietly, giving her space to grieve. When she finally looked up, he was watching her with something like hope in his eyes. What would it take to buy her? Walter raised an eyebrow. The helicopter? Yes. Elena, that thing hasn't flown in 30 years. Maybe longer. She'd need a complete rebuild. I know. That's tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours of work. And you'd need expertise, real expertise. I know. Walter shook his head slowly. Your daddy always said you'd come back for her. I told him he was crazy, that nobody would be foolish enough to take on a project like this. He paused. But you've got that same look in your eyes he used to get. That stubborn, impossible look. How much? Walter studied her for a long moment. $8,000, and you can use the barn rent-free for 1 year. That's enough time to either finish her or realize you can't. Elena's mind raced. She had savings, not much but some. And she had things she could sell. Her car, her grandmother's ring, the few pieces of jewelry Tyler had given her over the years. I need a few days to get the money together. Walter nodded. Take whatever time you need. Phoenix has waited 30 years. She can wait a little longer. Elena spent the next week liquidating her life. She sold her car to a dealership in Billings for $3,500. She sold her grandmother's ring to a jeweler who assured her it was worth at least double what he was offering. She sold every piece of clothing that didn't fit her growing body, every piece of electronics she didn't absolutely need, every reminder of the life she was leaving behind. In the end, she had $8,127. Exactly $127 more than she needed. Grace tried to talk her out of it. Honey, you're pregnant. You need that money for the baby. I know what I need. You need stability, security. Not a broken-down helicopter and a dream. That's exactly what I need. Elena took her mother's hands. Dad spent 20 years on Phoenix. 20 years trying to build something that mattered. Something that could help people. He died before he could finish. But I'm still here. And so is Phoenix. You don't know anything about helicopters. I'll learn. How? From where? Elena held up her father's journal. From him. Grace stared at the book, tears streaming down her face. Oh, Elena. I know it sounds crazy. I know everyone in town is going to think I've lost my mind. But I have to do this, Mom. For Dad. For the baby. For me. Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled Elena into a fierce hug. Your father would be so proud of you. Terrified, but proud. I'm terrified too. Good. That means you're paying attention. Elena bought Phoenix on a cold October morning. She was 5 months pregnant, her belly just starting to show her determination, absolute. Walter signed over the title with a flourish. She's yours now. God help you. Elena stood in front of the helicopter, one hand on her stomach, one hand on Phoenix's rusted frame. Okay, girl, she whispered. It's just you and me now. Let's show them what broken things can do. The first week was humbling. Elena opened her father's journal and realized she understood maybe one word in 10. Rotor assembly, cyclic pitch, collective control. The terms swam in front of her eyes, meaningless and intimidating. She started with YouTube. Tutorial after tutorial on helicopter mechanics, engine rebuilding, avionics systems. She watched until her eyes burned, took notes until her hand cramped, paused and rewound, and watched again until the concept started to click. Then she moved on to books. The Cedar Falls Library had exactly 3 books on aviation, all of them published before she was born. She ordered more online spending money she couldn't afford on textbooks and manuals and technical guides, and every day she went to the barn and worked. The first bolt she tried to remove took 2 hours. The wrench kept slipping on the corroded metal, tearing up her hands, leaving her palms blistered and bleeding. She wrapped them in bandages and kept going. The second bolt took an hour. The third took 30 minutes. By the end of the first week, she had removed exactly 17 bolts from Phoenix's engine housing. Her hands were destroyed. Her back ached constantly. Her pregnant belly made it impossible to crawl under the fuselage the way she needed to. But she didn't stop. On the 8th night, someone knocked on the barn door. Elena froze, heart pounding. It was almost 10 o'clock. Nobody came to the barn at 10 o'clock at night. Who's there? Name's Jackson Cole. I knew your father. Elena grabbed a wrench, holding it like a weapon as she cracked the door open. An old man stood on the other side, late 60s military-bearing, weathered face. His eyes went past her to the helicopter. So it's true, he said softly. Marcus's girl is trying to raise Phoenix. How do you know my father? I was his crew chief in Vietnam. We flew together for 18 months. Jackson's eyes were still fixed on the helicopter. He saved my life once. Flew into a hot LZ to pull me out when everyone else had written me off. He finally looked at Elena. I've owed him a debt for 50 years. Figured it's time to pay it. What are you offering? Expertise. I worked on helicopters for 30 years after the war. Hueys, Cobras, Apaches. If it flies and has rotors, I've fixed it. He pulled a toolbox from behind his back. Your daddy wrote me letters for 20 years about this project. I know her better than anyone alive except you. Elena stared at him, trying to decide if this was real or some exhaustion-induced hallucination. I can't pay you. Didn't ask for payment. Why would you help me? Jackson was quiet for a moment. Because Marcus believed in this bird. Because he believed she could save lives. And because when I look at you standing there with grease on your face and fire in your eyes, I see him, and I can't walk away from that. Elena felt tears threatening. She blinked them back. Fine, but I'm not stopping to explain everything I don't know. I'll learn as we go. Wouldn't have it any other way. Jackson stepped past her into the barn, eyes roaming over Phoenix like he was greeting an old friend. She's in worse shape than I expected. Is it hopeless? Nothing's hopeless. Not if you're stubborn enough. He turned and looked at her belly. How far along are you? 5 months. And you're doing this anyway. I'm doing this because of this. Elena placed her hand on her stomach. This baby is going to come into the world with nothing. No father, no money, no future I can see. But I can give her this. I can give her proof that her mother finished something impossible. That broken things can rise. Jackson studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Your daddy was the bravest pilot I ever knew. But you might just have him beat. He rolled up his sleeves. Now show me what you've done so far, and I'll try not to wince too hard. They worked together every night after that. Jackson taught her things her father's journal couldn't: the feel of properly torqued bolts, the sound of metal fatigue, the instinct for diagnosing problems that came only from decades of experience. He was demanding. Harsh sometimes. He didn't tolerate shortcuts or lazy thinking. But he was also patient in ways that surprised her, taking time to explain concepts she didn't understand, never making her feel stupid for asking questions. 3 weeks after Jackson arrived, someone else showed up. Her name was Maya Chen, 19 years old, first-generation American, college dropout who worked at the auto parts store on Main Street. I heard you're building something impossible, Maya said, standing in the barn doorway. I want to learn how. Elena looked at this young woman, seeing something familiar in her eyes. Hunger. Determination. The desperate need to prove that she was more than what the world said she could be. I can't pay you. I don't want money. I want experience. I want to build something that matters. Jackson grunted from beneath the engine block. We don't need any more help. Yes, we do, Elena said. She held out her hand to Maya. Welcome to the crew. Maya learned fast. Faster than Elena, had faster even than Jackson expected. She had an instinct for electronics, for systems, for the intricate dance of wires and circuits that made up Phoenix's avionics. Within a month, she had completely rewired the instrument panel using salvaged components and sheer ingenuity. Where did you learn to do that? Jackson asked, genuine surprise in his voice. YouTube and Spite, Maya replied. Same place I learned everything. The three of them fell into a rhythm. Jackson handled the mechanical systems. Maya handled electronics. Elena oversaw everything, making decisions, solving problems, keeping her father's dream alive one bolt at a time. And every night when she finally climbed into bed exhausted beyond words, she would place her hand on her growing belly and whisper to her daughter, "We're building something, baby girl. Something that's going to fly." At 7 months pregnant, everything changed. Dr. Patricia Wells had been Elena's doctor since childhood. She was the one who had delivered Elena 28 years ago. She was the one who had held Elena's hand when Marcus died. And now, she was the one delivering news that made Elena's blood run cold. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high." Patricia said, her voice gentle but firm. "Preeclampsia. It's serious." "How serious?" "Serious enough that you need to slow down. Ideally stop." "I can't stop." "Elena, listen to me. The stress you're putting your body through could trigger early labor. It could cause seizures. It could kill you or the baby or both." Elena felt the world tilt. There has to be something you can do. There is. Bed rest, medication, reduced activity. And Phoenix. Patricia's eyes were sad. "The helicopter will have to wait." That night, Elena sat in the barn alone. Jackson and Maya had gone home hours ago. The only sound was the wind rattling the roof and the occasional creak of settling wood. She placed her hand on Phoenix's frame, feeling the cold metal against her palm. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." She couldn't abandon the project, but she couldn't keep pushing either. Her daughter's life was at stake. Her own life was at stake. So she adapted. She stopped doing physical work. No more crawling under the fuselage. No more lifting heavy parts. No more 14-hour days that left her shaking with exhaustion. Instead, she supervised. She directed. She became the brain, while Jackson and Maya became the hands. It was harder than she expected. Watching other people do the work she desperately wanted to do herself, feeling useless while her body betrayed her. But she didn't quit. She pulled a lawn chair into the barn and sat there every day, her father's journal in her lap, pointing and instructing and refusing to let Phoenix die. And slowly, impossibly, the helicopter began to come together. The news about Elena's project spread through Cedar Falls like wildfire. At first, the reaction was mostly mockery. The pregnant woman from Denver trying to rebuild a helicopter she knew nothing about. People laughed at the diner. They shook their heads at the hardware store. They made bets about how long before she gave up. But as weeks turned into months, the mockery began to fade. People saw Elena at the barn every day, rain or shine, healthy or sick. They saw Jackson and Maya working alongside her. They saw the helicopter slowly transforming from scrap into something that looked almost real. And they started to help. Pete Okonkwo from the hardware store brought aviation-grade bolts. "Pay me when she flies," he said. Maria Santos from the diner brought food every evening. "You can't build a helicopter on an empty stomach." Reverend Thomas Wright came to bless the project. "I've seen a lot of faith in my years, but I've never seen faith with grease under its fingernails." Even people Elena didn't know started showing up. Farmers with spare sheet metal, retired electricians with old tools, a school teacher who donated her late husband's flight manuals. Cedar Falls was rallying around Phoenix, around Elena, around a dream that nobody had believed in except the people crazy enough to try. But not everyone in town was supportive. Harold Mercer showed up on a Tuesday afternoon 8 months into the project. He was the county building inspector, a thin man with mean eyes and a clipboard he wielded like a weapon. "Elena Brooks." Elena looked up from her lawn chair, immediately on guard. "That's me. I'm here to inspect this property." Harold walked around Phoenix, slowly writing notes, his face pinched with disapproval. Unpermitted construction, unregistered aircraft, hazardous materials storage. He looked at Elena with something close to satisfaction. "I could shut you down today." "On what grounds?" Multiple code violations, safety concerns. Take your pick. Elena felt her blood pressure spike exactly what Patricia had warned her about. She forced herself to breathe. This barn was standing before you were born. My father worked here for 20 years without anyone caring about permits. Your father didn't have a pregnant woman crawling around aviation fuel and welding equipment. Harold snapped his clipboard closed. You've got 30 days to file proper documentation with the FAA and bring this facility up to code. Otherwise, I'm condemning the property. After he left, Elena sat very still for a long time. Jackson found her there an hour later, staring at nothing. What happened? Harold Mercer. He's trying to shut us down. Jackson swore under his breath. That man has had it out for your family for decades. He and your father had some kind of falling out years ago. Nobody remembers what it was about. It doesn't matter what it was about. What matters is he has the power to end this. So what do we do? Elena looked at Phoenix, at her father's dream, at the future she was trying to build for her daughter. We find another way. There's always another way. Maya found the solution. She discovered that experimental aircraft could qualify for special certification if overseen by a licensed FAA mechanic. The process was complex, but possible. There's a retired FAA inspector 2 hours from here. Maya said, her laptop open to a directory. Robert Hartwell. He's certified over 40 home-built aircraft. And according to the forums, he has a soft spot for underdogs. Elena called him that night. Robert Robbie Hartwell had a voice like gravel and a laugh like thunder. He listened to Elena's entire story without interrupting, then was quiet for so long she thought the call had dropped. Let me get this straight, he finally said. You're 8 months pregnant, building your dead father's helicopter with no money, no training, and a county inspector trying to shut you down. That's about the size of it. And you want me to drive 2 hours to oversee a project that might be the most idiotic thing I've ever heard of. Yes, sir. Robbie was quiet again. Then he laughed that thunder laugh. I'll be there Saturday. Don't disappoint me. Robbie arrived in a beat-up pickup truck with FAA stickers on the bumper. He spent 3 hours examining Phoenix, studying Marcus's journal, questioning Jackson about every modification and repair. When he was done, he stood in front of Elena with his arms crossed. This is either brilliant or insane. Can it be both? Robbie's face cracked into a smile. I like you, kid. You've got your father's stubbornness. He pulled out a stack of forms. I'll oversee the project, pro bono. Someone helped me once back when I was too dumb to know I needed it. Time to pay it forward. Harold Mercer's deadline came and went. The paperwork was filed. The project continued. But Elena's body had other plans. The contractions started 3 weeks before her due date. She was in the barn watching Maya install the new GPS system when the first one hit. A wave of pressure that made her gasp made her grab the arm of her lawn chair so hard her knuckles went white. Elena! Jackson looked up from the engine. What's wrong? I think... Another contraction stronger this time. I think the baby's coming. Everything after that was chaos. Jackson calling 911. Maya helping Elena to her feet. The ambulance arriving, sirens wailing, paramedics loading her onto a stretcher while she tried to explain that she couldn't leave yet. Phoenix needed her. The project wasn't finished. The helicopter can wait, one of the paramedics said firmly. Your baby can't. Hope Elena Brooks was born at 2:47 a.m. on December 14th, weighing 6 pounds 4 ounces. She had her mother's eyes and her grandfather's stubborn chin. Elena held her daughter for the first time, tears streaming down her face, and whispered the words she had been saving for months. Welcome to the world, baby girl. We've got a helicopter to finish. 2 weeks after Hope was born, Elena still couldn't leave the hospital. The doctors called it complications. Elena called it torture. Every day she spent in that bed was another day Phoenix sat untouched in the barn. Another day closer to failure. You need to rest, Grace said, holding Hope in her arms. Your body has been through trauma. My body can rest when Phoenix flies. Elena, listen to yourself. You just had a baby. You almost died. But I didn't die, and neither did she. Elena looked at her daughter, so small, so perfect. I made her a promise, Mom. I told her we would finish this. Grace shook her head. You're just as stubborn as your father. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. Jackson visited every evening after working on Phoenix. He brought updates, but Elena could see something was wrong. He was holding back. Tell me, she said on the 10th night. Whatever it is, just tell me. Jackson sat down heavily in the chair beside her bed. We found damage we didn't know about. The main rotor shaft has stress fractures. Microscopic, but they're there. Elena's heart dropped. Can we fix it? We need a new shaft, custom fabricated. That's $15,000 minimum. We don't have $15,000. I know. Elena stared at the ceiling, fighting back tears. Every time they solved one problem, another appeared. It was like the universe was testing her, pushing her to see how much she could take before she broke. There has to be another way. Maybe. Maybe not. Jackson leaned forward. Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay? Why are you really doing this? And don't give me the speech about your father's dream. I've heard that one. I want the real reason. Elena was quiet for a long moment. She looked at Hope sleeping peacefully in the bassinet beside her bed. When Tyler left, I had nothing. No money, no home, no future. I was just another statistic, another single mother who would struggle for the rest of her life. Her voice cracked. But Phoenix gave me something to fight for, something bigger than myself. If I can build a helicopter from nothing, then maybe I can build a life too. Maybe I can show Hope that impossible is just a word people use when they're afraid to try. Jackson nodded slowly. Your father said something similar once, right before we flew into that hot LZ in Vietnam. What did he say? He said fear is just excitement without oxygen. Then he flew straight into enemy fire and saved my life. Jackson stood up. I'll find that money. Somehow. You just focus on getting out of this hospital. 3 days later, Elena was discharged. She went straight to the barn. Phoenix looked the same, but Elena felt different. Weaker. Her body hadn't recovered from the birth, and every step felt like walking through water. But she refused to sit in that lawn chair again. Refused to watch from the sidelines. You should be home, Maya said, watching Elena examine the damaged rotor shaft. I am home. You know what I mean. Yes, and I'm choosing to ignore it. Maya sighed, but didn't argue. She had learned that arguing with Elena was pointless. The woman had traded everything she owned for a rusted helicopter while 5 months pregnant. Reason wasn't her strong suit. That evening, Jackson arrived with news. I found someone who might help with the money situation. Elena looked up. Who? Her name is Elena Brooks. She's your father's sister. The name hit Elena like a physical blow. Aunt Catherine, I haven't seen her since I was 12. I know. There was some kind of falling out between her and your father. Nobody talks about it. She didn't even come to his funeral. I know that too. But she's the only family you have left besides your mother, and she happens to be a retired aerospace engineer who worked on military helicopters for 30 years. Elena processed this information slowly. An aunt she hadn't seen in 16 years. An expert in exactly what she needed. A family wound she had never understood. How did you find her? I have my ways. Jackson handed her a piece of paper with a phone number. Call her, or don't. But the offer is there. Elena stared at the number for 3 days before she finally dialed. Catherine answered on the second ring. Hello. Aunt Catherine. This is Elena Brooks. Silence. Long, painful silence. I know who you are. Catherine's voice was measured, careful. I've been wondering when you would call. You knew about Phoenix. I know everything. Jackson Cole is not as subtle as he thinks. A pause. I also know you're in over your head. Elena bristled. I'm managing. You're drowning. There's a difference. Catherine sighed. I should have come back years ago. When Marcus got sick. When he died. But I was too proud. Too angry about things that don't matter anymore. What happened between you and my father? That's a conversation for another time. Right now, what matters is whether you want my help or not. Elena thought about Hope, about the promise she had made, about the $15,000 she didn't have. Yes, I want your help. Then I'll be there tomorrow. Catherine Brooks arrived in a rental car at exactly 9 o'clock the next morning. She was smaller than Elena remembered, with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. They stood facing each other in front of the barn, 16 years of silence between them. You look like him, Catherine said finally. More than I expected. Everyone says that. Because it's true. Catherine walked past Elena into the barn, her eyes going immediately to Phoenix. She circled the helicopter slowly, touching nothing, just looking. The stress fractures in the rotor shaft, Catherine said. Jackson told me. But that's not your only problem. What else? The tail rotor gearbox is misaligned. Your cyclic control linkage is off by 3 degrees. And whoever rewired the avionics did a decent job but missed 2 critical ground connections. Catherine turned to face Elena. This helicopter shouldn't be within 100 miles of the sky. Elena felt her face flush. We've been doing our best. Your best isn't good enough. Not for aviation. Not for something that could kill you. Catherine's voice was harsh, but her eyes were not unkind. That's not a criticism. It's a fact. You need expertise you don't have. Then teach me. That's why I'm here. Catherine pulled a checkbook from her purse. $15,000 for the rotor shaft. Another 10 for parts we're going to need that you haven't discovered yet. And my time for as long as it takes. Elena stared at the check Catherine was writing. I can't accept that. It's too much. It's not nearly enough. Catherine tore out the check and pressed it into Elena's hand. I missed 20 years of your life. I missed watching you grow up. I missed your father's funeral because I was too stubborn to admit I was wrong. This money doesn't begin to cover what I owe. What happened between you and Dad? Catherine was quiet for a long moment. We had different ideas about what Phoenix should be. I wanted him to sell the design to the military. He wanted to use it for civilian rescue. We said things we couldn't take back. Her voice dropped. The last words I ever spoke to my brother were in anger. I have to live with that for the rest of my life. Don't make the same mistake. Elena looked at the check, then at her aunt. Okay, but you're not just writing checks. You're getting your hands dirty too. For the first time, Catherine smiled. I wouldn't have it any other way. The next 6 weeks transformed Phoenix. Catherine was relentless. She worked 12-hour days, pushing everyone to her standard. She and Jackson argued constantly about methodology, about approach, about everything. Maya served as referee, translating between the old military man and the aerospace engineer. And Elena learned, faster than she thought possible. Catherine was a demanding teacher, accepting nothing less than perfection, but she was also patient when it mattered. Again, Catherine would say when Elena made a mistake. Do it again until your hands remember. My hands are bleeding. Then they'll remember faster. Hope grew during those weeks. She went from a sleeping bundle to an alert baby who watched everything with curious eyes. Elena brought her to the barn every day, setting up a playpen in the corner where she could see her mother work. She's going to grow up thinking this is normal, Maya said one day, watching Hope giggle at the sparks from a welding torch. Maybe it is normal. For her. Elena wiped sweat from her forehead. Maybe she'll grow up thinking impossible things are just things that haven't been done yet. 2 months after Catherine arrived, Phoenix was ready for her first systems test. They gathered around the helicopter at dawn. Elena, Catherine Jackson, Maya Robbie, the FAA inspector, and Grace holding Hope. The tension was thick enough to cut. "If this doesn't work," Jackson muttered, "we're back to square one." "It will work," Catherine said. But even she looked nervous. Elena climbed into the cockpit. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, had sacrificed everything for it. And now it was here. "Starting systems check," she announced. She flipped the first switch. The instrument panel lit up. "Avionics online," Maya confirmed. Second switch. The hydraulic system hummed to life. "Hydraulics nominal," Jackson called out. Third switch. The engine began its startup sequence. Everyone held their breath. The engine caught, sputtered, died. Elena's heart sank. "What happened?" Catherine was already moving, opening the engine compartment. "Fuel line, give me a wrench." They worked frantically for 20 minutes. Elena sat in the cockpit, feeling useless, watching her aunt and Jackson argue over the engine. "Try again," Catherine finally called. Elena flipped the switch. The engine caught, sputtered, and this time it held. The rotors began to spin, slowly at first, then faster. The sound filled the barn, filled her chest, filled her heart with something she had almost forgotten how to feel: hope. "All systems green," Robbie announced, his voice thick with emotion. "She's alive." Elena climbed out of the cockpit, legs shaking. She looked at Phoenix rotors, spinning engine purring, and felt tears streaming down her face. "Dad," she whispered, "we did it. We actually did it." But the celebration was short-lived. 3 days after the systems test, Harold Mercer returned. He arrived with 2 county deputies and a stack of papers. His smile was thin and mean. "Elena Brooks, I have a cease and desist order from the county court." Elena's blood ran cold. "On what grounds?" "Noise complaints, safety violations, operating an unlicensed aviation facility." Harold thrust the papers into her hands. "You have 48 hours to shut down operations or face criminal charges." "You can't do this. We have FAA certification pending." "Pending isn't approved. And until it is, this county has jurisdiction." Harold looked at Phoenix with undisguised satisfaction. "I told you I'd shut this down. Should have listened." After he left, Elena stood frozen, the papers crumpling in her fist. "He's been planning this," Jackson said grimly, "waiting for us to get close so it would hurt more." "Why does he hate us so much?" Catherine answered quietly. "Because your father humiliated him once, 30 years ago. Harold wanted to marry your mother. Marcus won her instead. Some men never forgive that kind of thing." Elena stared at her aunt. "This is about Mom. It's about pride, wounded pride, and small men who never let go of grudges." "What do we do?" Catherine's eyes were hard. "We fight. We find a lawyer, we file an appeal, and we drag this out until our FAA certification comes through. Harold thinks he has power, but power is temporary. What we're building is permanent." The next 48 hours were chaos. Catherine called in favors from her aerospace days. A lawyer from Helena agreed to take the case pro bono. The appeal was filed. The cease and desist was temporarily suspended pending judicial review. But the damage was done. Word spread through Cedar Falls. Some people supported Elena. Others sided with Harold, whispering that she had always been trouble, just like her father. Elena tried to ignore the whispers, tried to focus on the work. But late at night, holding hope in the darkness, doubt crept in. "Am I doing the right thing?" she whispered to her daughter. "Am I being selfish? Fighting this hard for something that might never happen?" Hope couldn't answer. But she grabbed Elena's finger and held on tight. Maybe that was answer enough. The court hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. 3 weeks of waiting. 3 weeks of uncertainty. 3 weeks of Harold Mercer smirking every time he saw Elena in town. But those 3 weeks also brought unexpected allies. Maria Santos from the diner organized a petition. 300 signatures in support of Phoenix from residents who remembered Marcus Brooks, who believed in what his daughter was trying to build. Pete Okonkwo testified about the economic impact the project could have, the jobs it might create, the attention it could bring to Cedar Falls. Even Walter Crane, the rancher who had sold Elena the helicopter, stood up at a town council meeting. "I've known this family for 50 years. Walter said, his voice carrying across the room. "Marcus Brooks was the finest man I ever met. His daughter has his heart. If she says that helicopter can save lives, I believe her. And I think this town should believe her too." The hearing arrived on a cold February morning. Elena dressed in the nicest clothes she owned, which weren't very nice at all. Catherine helped her prepare, coaching her on what to say, how to present herself. "Remember," Catherine said, "you're not just fighting for Phoenix. You're fighting for what Phoenix represents. A father's dream, a daughter's promise, a community's hope. What if I lose? Then we appeal. And we keep appealing until we win." Catherine squeezed her shoulder. "Stubbornness is a Brooks family trait. Use it." The courtroom was packed. Elena saw faces she recognized and faces she didn't. She saw Harold Mercer at the plaintiff's table looking smug. She saw Grace in the gallery holding hope, tears already in her eyes. The judge was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and a no-nonsense expression. She listened to Harold's arguments about safety and regulations and proper procedures. Then she turned to Elena. "Ms. Brooks, you have something to say." Elena stood up. Her legs were shaking, but her voice was steady. "Your Honor, my father spent 20 years building Phoenix. He believed that helicopter could save lives, could reach people in places ambulances couldn't go, could make a difference in communities like ours that are too small for the world to care about." She took a breath. "He died before he could finish, but I'm still here. And I made a promise to my daughter that I would complete what he started." "This isn't about dreams, Your Honor," Harold interrupted. "It's about regulations." The judge silenced him with a look. "Ms. Brooks, continue." "I know I'm not an engineer. I know I don't have the credentials or the experience. But I have something else. I have people who believe in me. People who have given their time, their expertise, their money to help make this happen." Elena gestured to Catherine, to Jackson, to Maya. "Phoenix isn't just my project anymore. It belongs to everyone who worked on her. Everyone who believed when believing seemed foolish." She paused, gathering herself for what came next. "Harold Mercer has every right to enforce regulations, but I think we both know this isn't about regulations. This is about a grudge that's older than I am. And I don't think anyone's dream should die because of someone else's wounded pride." The courtroom was silent. Harold's face had gone red with anger. The judge studied Elena for a long moment. Then she looked at the papers in front of her. "I've reviewed the FAA certification documents, the inspection reports, the testimony of licensed aviation professionals who have overseen this project." She removed her glasses. "I'm also aware of the petition signed by over 300 Cedar Falls residents in support of Miss Brooks." Elena held her breath. "The cease and desist is hereby suspended indefinitely. Ms. Brooks will be permitted to continue her work pending final FAA certification, provided she maintains compliance with all applicable safety standards." The courtroom erupted. Elena stood frozen, unable to process what she had just heard. They had won. Grace rushed forward. Hope in her arms, tears streaming down her face. Catherine was smiling, actually smiling for the first time since Elena had met her. Jackson pumped his fist in the air. Maya was hugging everyone within reach. Elena looked at Harold Mercer. He was gathering his papers, his face twisted with fury. For a moment their eyes met. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "You'll make a mistake eventually. And I'll be waiting. Elena thought about responding, thought about all the things she could say to a man who had spent 30 years nursing hatred. Instead, she just turned away and walked into the arms of the people who loved her. Some battles weren't worth winning. Some people weren't worth fighting. Phoenix was all that mattered now. That night, Elena sat in the cockpit of the helicopter Hope, asleep in her arms. The barn was quiet. Everyone had gone home to celebrate. But Elena needed this moment alone. She traced her fingers over the controls, feeling the smooth metal, the worn leather, the history embedded in every surface. "We're so close, Dad," she whispered. "So close I can taste it." Hope stirred in her sleep, making soft sounds. Elena looked down at her daughter and felt something shift inside her. Something that had been wound tight for months, finally beginning to loosen. "You know what?" she said softly. "No matter what happens next, we've already won. We proved that impossible is just a word. We proved that broken things can rise." She kissed Hope's forehead and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, they would continue the work. Tomorrow, they would take another step toward the sky. But tonight, just for a moment, Elena let herself rest. She had earned it. 3 weeks after the court victory, the call came. Elena was elbow-deep in Phoenix's engine compartment when her phone rang. She almost ignored it, but something made her pull off her gloves and answer. "Ms. Brooks, this is Director Samuel Hayes from the FAA Regional Office." Elena's heart stopped. "Yes. I'm calling to inform you that your experimental aircraft certification has been approved. Phoenix is cleared for flight." The phone slipped from Elena's fingers. She caught it before it hit the ground, hands shaking. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "You heard me correctly. Congratulations, Ms. Brooks. Your bird can fly." Elena ended the call and stood motionless for a full minute. Then she screamed. Jackson came running from the other side of the barn. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "We got it." Elena grabbed his shoulders, laughing and crying at the same time. "Jackson, we got the certification. Phoenix can fly." The old man's face transformed. Years seemed to fall away as he pulled Elena into a fierce hug. "Your daddy is dancing somewhere right now. I guarantee it." Maya arrived 10 minutes later, responding to Elena's frantic text. Catherine was right behind her. They gathered around Phoenix, 4 people who had given everything to this moment and let it sink in. "So what now?" Maya asked. Elena looked at the helicopter, at her father's dream finally complete. "Now we fly." The first flight was scheduled for Saturday, March 15th. Exactly 1 year to the day since Elena had stood in this barn and seen Phoenix for the first time. Word spread through Cedar Falls like wildfire. By Friday evening, half the town had called to ask if they could watch. Elena said yes to everyone. This wasn't just her moment. It belonged to all of them. Grace arrived at the barn early Saturday morning, Hope bundled in her arms. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Elena admitted. "I've done simulator training. I've studied every manual Catherine could find, but this is different." "Of course it's different. It's real." Grace touched her daughter's face. "Your father was terrified too. The night before his first solo flight in Vietnam, he called me, said he wasn't sure he could do it." "What did you tell him?" "I told him fear was just his body's way of paying attention, that the only way through it was forward." Grace smiled. "He flew the next day, and every day after that for 3 years. Elena hugged her mother tight. "Thank you for everything." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you land safely." By 10 o'clock, the field behind Walter's barn was crowded. Elena saw Pete and Maria Reverend Wright, and the librarian, farmers and shopkeepers and schoolchildren. She saw Catherine standing with Robbie, both of them running final checks. She saw Jackson by the helicopter, his hand resting on the frame like he was saying goodbye to an old friend. And she saw Harold Mercer standing at the edge of the crowd, watching with cold eyes. Let him watch, Elena thought. Let him see what happens when people refuse to give up. She climbed into the cockpit. The controls felt familiar now, an extension of her own body. She had spent hundreds of hours in this seat, learning every switch, every gauge, every vibration and sound. Pre-flight check complete. Catherine's voice came through the headset. All systems nominal. Copy that. Elena's hands were steady. Her heart was not. Beginning startup sequence. The engine coughed, caught, roared to life. The rotors began to spin slowly, at first, then faster, building to a thunderous rhythm that Elena felt in her bones. This was it. This was the moment everything had been building toward. You are cleared for takeoff, Robbie announced. Good luck, Phoenix. Elena pulled the collective. The helicopter trembled, groaned, and then, impossibly beautifully, began to rise. 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. The ground fell away beneath her. The crowd became a sea of upturned faces, mouths open, hands waving. Elena heard cheering through the engine noise, a wall of sound that seemed to lift her higher. She was flying. She was actually flying. How does it feel? Jackson's voice crackled through the headset. Elena laughed, tears streaming down her face. Like being born again. She flew for 15 minutes. Just circles around the field, nothing fancy, nothing dangerous. But when she landed, her legs barely held her weight as she climbed out of the cockpit. Grace reached her first hope in her arms. The baby was reaching toward the sky, toward the place her mother had just been. You did it, Grace sobbed. Elena, you really did it. Elena took her daughter, held her close, and whispered into her tiny ear. We did it, baby girl. We really did. The celebration lasted all day. Someone brought beer. Someone else brought a barbecue grill. Maria showed up with enough food to feed an army. By evening, it had turned into the biggest party Cedar Falls had seen in years. But Elena couldn't fully relax. Something was nagging at her, a feeling she couldn't shake. She found Jackson sitting alone watching the sunset. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect. Jackson, I know you well enough by now. What is it? The old man was quiet for a long moment. I was just thinking about Wyatt. Wyatt. My brother. The one who... Jackson stopped, corrected himself. I never told you, did I? Told me what? Your father and I didn't meet in Vietnam. We met in Montana, 20 years before that war. Jackson's voice was heavy. Wyatt was my younger brother. He was the one who started building Phoenix, not Marcus. Elena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. What are you saying? I'm saying your father's dream wasn't originally his dream. It was my brother's. Jackson finally looked at her. Wyatt died in 1962. Accident at the machine shop where he worked. He was 23 years old. And the helicopter. Marcus was his best friend. They built it together, dreamed together. When Wyatt died, Marcus promised to finish what they started. Jackson's eyes were wet. He spent 20 years trying to keep that promise. And now you've done what he couldn't. Elena sat down heavily. Her mind was reeling. Everything she thought she knew about Phoenix, about her father's dream, had just shifted. Why didn't you tell me before? Because it didn't matter before. What mattered was the work, the mission. Jackson wiped his eyes. But now that she's flying, I thought you should know. Phoenix isn't just your father's legacy. She's my brother's too. And in a strange way, she's mine. Elena reached over and took his hand. Then, we all finished it together. Jackson squeezed her fingers. Yeah, I guess we did. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, Hope beside her, thinking about Wyatt, about her father, about all the people who had poured their dreams into a machine that was finally alive. She had thought Phoenix was about her, about proving something to herself, to Hope, to the world. But it was so much bigger than that. It was about legacy. About the way dreams could pass from one person to another like a flame handed down through generations. She was still thinking about this when her phone rang at 3:47 a.m. Elena, It's Sheriff Davis. We have an emergency. Elena sat up, instantly alert. What kind of emergency? A hiker got lost in the backcountry. Temperatures dropping fast. Search and rescue can't get a helicopter out here until morning, and by then it might be too late. Where? Devil's Ridge, about 30 miles northeast. Elena's blood ran cold. Devil's Ridge was treacherous terrain accessible only by air, the kind of place her father had dreamed of reaching. I can be there in 40 minutes. Silence on the other end. Then, Elena. That's a night flight in unfamiliar territory. Are you sure? No, but I'm going anyway. She was out of bed before the call ended. Jackson answered his phone on the first ring. What's wrong? Emergency rescue, Devil's Ridge. I need you at the barn in 15 minutes. On my way. Catherine arrived before Jackson did. She was already running pre-flight checks when Elena pulled up. You heard? Grace called me. Catherine didn't look up from her checklist. This is insane, you know. Night flying in mountains with less than 1 day of flight experience. I know. You could die. I know. Catherine finally looked at her. Then why are you doing it? Elena thought about the question. About all the reasons she could give. About her father and Wyatt and the dreams that had built Phoenix. Because this is why she exists. This is what she was made for. And if I don't go, someone else might not come home. Catherine held her gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. Let's get you in the air. The flight to Devil's Ridge was the hardest thing Elena had ever done. Darkness pressed against the cockpit windows. The mountains were invisible, felt more than seen looming presences that could kill her with one wrong move. Her instruments were her only guide, the numbers and needles that told her she was still alive. Jackson talked her through it over the radio, his voice calm and steady. You're doing fine. Just follow the heading. Trust the equipment. I can't see anything. You don't need to see. You need to fly. Elena gripped the controls and kept going. 43 minutes later, she reached the coordinates. Her spotlight cut through the darkness, sweeping across rock and snow and frozen brush. There, she said suddenly. I see something. A figure huddled against a rock face, not moving. Elena's heart clenched. I have visual on the hiker. He's not moving. I need to get down there. Elena, there's nowhere to land. That terrain is impossible. Then I'll make it possible. She descended slowly, searching for any flat surface large enough to hold Phoenix. There was nothing. Just rocks and shadows, and a person who might already be dead. Then she saw it. A narrow ledge barely wider than the helicopter's skids. It was crazy. It was suicidal. It was her only option. I'm going in, she announced. Elena, don't. She cut the radio and focused everything on the descent. Inch by inch, foot by foot, she lowered Phoenix toward the ledge. The skids touched rock, held. She killed the engine and was out of the cockpit before the rotors stopped spinning. The hiker was a teenage boy, maybe 16. His lips were blue, his skin like ice. But when Elena pressed her fingers to his neck, she felt a pulse. Hold on, she said, pulling off her jacket and wrapping it around him. I've got you. You're going to be okay. Getting him into the helicopter took every ounce of strength she had. He was dead weight, unresponsive, nearly frozen. But she managed, dragging and lifting and praying until he was secured in the cabin. The takeoff was even harder than the landing. Elena pushed the collective, felt the skids scrape against rock felt. Phoenix shudder and fight for purchase. For one horrible moment, she was sure they were going to slide off the ledge. Then they were airborne, rising, flying. I have him, she said into the radio. I'm coming home. She landed at the Cedar Falls Hospital just as the sun was rising. Medical teams rushed forward, pulling the boy from the cabin, racing him inside. Elena watched from the cockpit, too exhausted to move. Jackson found her there 20 minutes later. You did it. Is he going to be okay? They say he'll make a full recovery. Another hour out there and he would have been dead. Elena closed her eyes. The weight of the night finally crashed down on her, every emotion she had been holding back flooding through at once. "I was so scared," she whispered. "The whole time I was so scared." That's what courage is. Jackson helped her out of the cockpit. Being scared and doing it anyway. The rescue made news. By noon, reporters were calling. By evening, the story had gone national. Single mother builds father's dream helicopter, saves teen's life. Elena gave one interview, then refused the rest. She wasn't interested in fame. She had never been interested in fame. But the attention brought something unexpected. 3 days after the rescue, a woman appeared at the barn. Late 50s, elegant with expensive clothes and nervous eyes. "Can I help you?" Elena asked. "I'm looking for Elena Brooks." "You found her." The woman's face crumpled. "I'm Michael's mother, Michael Reyes, the boy you saved." Elena set down her wrench. "How is he?" "He's going to be fine, thanks to you." Sophia Reyes pressed a hand to her heart. "I don't know how to thank you. I don't know what I would have done if—" "You don't have to thank me. I did what Phoenix was built to do." "No." Sophia's voice was fierce. "You did what a hero does. You risked your life for a stranger. For my son." She pulled an envelope from her purse. "I know you won't take money. Your mother told me. But I want to help somehow. Please, let me help." Elena looked at the envelope, then at the woman in front of her. She thought about all the people who had helped her. All the hands that had lifted her when she couldn't lift herself. "Do you know anything about helicopters?" Sophia blinked. "No." "Do you know anything about running a foundation?" "I was a nonprofit director for 15 years. Elena smiled. "Then I think we should talk." The conversation lasted 4 hours. By the end, they had the outline of something bigger than either of them had imagined. A rescue service, a training program, a foundation that would carry Phoenix's mission forward. "We'll call it the Marcus Brooks Aerial Rescue Foundation," Sophia said. "Named for your father." Elena shook her head. "Named for everyone who built her. My father, Wyatt, Jackson, Catherine, Maya, all of them." "Whatever you want. This is your vision." "No, it's our vision now." That night, Elena sat in the cockpit one more time. Hope was asleep in her carrier, strapped safely in the co-pilot seat. The barn was quiet, filled only with the sound of breathing and the soft creaks of settling metal. Elena looked at her daughter, at the helicopter, at the future that was finally taking shape. "You know what, baby girl," she said softly. "I think we're going to be okay. I think we're going to be more than okay." Hope stirred in her sleep, reaching out with tiny fingers. Elena took her daughter's hand and held on tight. Outside, the first stars were appearing. The same stars her father had watched from this barn. The same stars Wyatt had dreamed beneath. The same stars that had guided her through the darkness to save a life. Elena didn't know what tomorrow would bring. More challenges, probably. More obstacles. More reasons to doubt and fear and wonder if she was strong enough. But she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Phoenix. She had hope. She had a community that believed in her. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. The phone rang, breaking the silence. Elena answered without looking at the screen. "Hello. Elena." A voice she hadn't heard in almost 2 years. A voice that made her blood turn to ice. "Tyler." Silence. Then, "I saw you on the news. I saw what you did." Elena's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" "I want to see her. My daughter. I want to see Hope." The world tilted. Elena looked at her sleeping child, at the innocent face that knew nothing of the man who had abandoned them both. "You gave up your rights. You signed the papers." I know I did. But Elena, please. I made a mistake. I want to make it right." Elena closed her eyes. Of all the things she had prepared for, of all the obstacles she had overcome, she had never prepared for this. The father who had left was asking to come back. And Elena had no idea what to do. Elena did not sleep that night. She sat in her mother's kitchen until dawn, the phone lying on the table between them like a loaded weapon. Grace listened without interrupting as Elena recounted the conversation word by word. "He wants to see her," Elena said for the 5th time. "After everything he did, he wants to see her." "What did you tell him?" "I told him I needed time to think." Grace reached across the table and took her daughter's hands. "And what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about the night he left, the way he looked at me when I told him I was pregnant, like I had ruined his life." Elena's voice cracked. "I'm thinking about every night I spent alone wondering if I was enough, if Hope would grow up damaged because her father didn't want her. And now? Now I don't know. I don't know if I should let him back in or slam the door so hard he never comes back." Grace was quiet for a long moment. "Can I tell you something about your father?" Elena looked up. "What?" "When I got pregnant with you, Marcus panicked. He was 24 years old, just back from Vietnam, still having nightmares every night. He told me he wasn't ready. Told me he didn't know how to be a father. Dad said that. He said a lot of things that first week, things he regretted for the rest of his life." Grace's eyes were distant remembering. "But then something changed. He looked at my belly, at the life growing inside me, and he made a choice. He chose to stay, to try, to become the man he needed to be. That's different. Dad stayed. Tyler left." "Yes, but people can change, Elena. The question is whether Tyler has changed, and whether you're willing to find out." The question haunted Elena for days. She threw herself into work trying to escape the decision that loomed over her. The foundation was taking shape. Sophia had connections, resources, experience. Within 2 weeks, they had filed for nonprofit status and begun fundraising. But Tyler's voice kept echoing in her head. "I made a mistake. I want to make it right." Jackson noticed her distraction. "You want to talk about it?" "Not really." "That's fine, but whatever it is, it's eating you alive." He handed her a wrench. "Sometimes the best way to think is to keep your hands busy." She took his advice, losing herself in the familiar rhythm of maintenance and repair. Phoenix needed constant attention now that she was flying regularly. Every flight revealed new issues, small problems that needed fixing before they became big problems. 1 week after Tyler's call, her phone rang again. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Elena, it's Tyler. I'm in Montana." Her blood ran cold. "What?" "I drove up yesterday. I'm staying at a motel in Billings." His voice was hesitant, uncertain. "I know I have no right to ask, but please, just give me one meeting, 1 hour. If you still want me gone after that, I'll go." Elena gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. "You should have asked before you came." I know I should have. But I was afraid if I asked you'd say no. I might still say no. Then say it. Tell me to leave and I will." Elena closed her eyes. She thought about Hope sleeping peacefully at home. She thought about the life she had built, the family she had found. She thought about all the reasons she should hang up and never look back. 1 hour, she heard herself say. Tomorrow, at the diner in town. And Tyler, if you're late, don't bother showing up at all. She ended the call before he could respond. That night she told Grace what she had done. Her mother's face went through a series of emotions, surprise, concern, and something else, something that looked almost like hope. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No, this is something I need to do alone." "Are you going to bring Hope?" Elena shook her head. "Not yet. Not until I know what he really wants." And what if he wants back in? What if he wants to be a father? Elena looked at her sleeping daughter, at the peaceful face that had never known rejection or abandonment. "Then I need to decide if that's something I can live with." The next day, Elena arrived at Maria's diner 15 minutes early. She chose a booth in the corner where she could see the door. Maria brought her coffee without being asked, along with a look of maternal concern. "You okay, honey?" "Ask me in an hour." Tyler walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. He looked different than Elena remembered. Thinner, older. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by something that might have been humility. He slid into the booth across from her. "Thank you for meeting me." "I haven't decided if you should thank me yet." Tyler nodded, accepting this. "Fair enough." They sat in silence for a long moment. Elena studied him, looking for signs of the man who had abandoned her, looking for reasons not to trust him. "Why are you here, Tyler?" "The real reason." "Because I made the worst mistake of my life, and I've spent the last 2 years trying to fix it. By ignoring us, by signing away your rights, by getting help." Tyler's voice was raw. "When I left, I was broken. I didn't know how to be a person, let alone a father. I was selfish and scared, and I ran because running was easier than facing what I'd done. And now I've spent 18 months in therapy. I've worked through things I've been carrying since I was a kid. I've learned how to take responsibility for my actions." He met her eyes. "I'm not the same person who walked out that door, Elena. I'm not asking you to believe that. I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove it." Elena felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not trust, but something. A crack in the wall she had built. "What do you want, Tyler, specifically? What are you asking for?" "I want to be part of Hope's life, in whatever way you'll allow." He leaned forward. "I'm not asking for custody. I'm not asking to move in or play house. I just want to know my daughter. I want her to know that her father didn't abandon her because she wasn't worth loving." "But you did abandon her." "I abandoned you. Both of you. And I will regret that until the day I die." Tyler's voice broke. "But she doesn't have to carry that regret. She doesn't have to grow up wondering why her father didn't want her. I can give her better than that. If you let me." Elena sat back, processing. This wasn't what she had expected. She had expected excuses, deflections, the old Tyler who always found someone else to blame. This was someone different. Someone who sounded almost like he meant it. "I need time," she said finally. "This isn't a decision I can make in one conversation." "I understand." "And Tyler, if I let you back in even a little and you hurt her, if you make promises you don't keep, if you disappear again." Elena's voice was steel. "I will destroy you. Not physically, not legally. I will make sure she knows exactly what kind of man her father is, and she will never ever give you another chance." Tyler nodded slowly. "I would deserve that." "Yes, you would." They talked for another hour. Not about Hope, about the time that had passed, about Tyler's therapy, his realizations, the work he had done to understand why he had run. Elena didn't trust him. She wasn't sure she ever would. But by the time she left the diner, she was no longer certain she wanted him gone forever. And that terrified her more than anything. 2 weeks passed. Elena didn't call Tyler, didn't return his texts. She needed to think, to process, to figure out what was right for Hope. In the meantime, the foundation consumed her attention. Sophia had secured their first major donation, $100,000 from an anonymous benefactor who had seen Elena's story on the news. "This changes everything," Sophia said, her eyes bright. "We can buy a second helicopter, train more pilots, expand our coverage area. One step at a time." But Elena was smiling too. "Let's make sure we can handle what we have before we reach for more." The training program launched in April. 12 students enrolled in the first session, all women, all from backgrounds where they had been told what they couldn't do. Elena taught the first class herself. Standing in the barn that had witnessed her darkest moments, She looked at these young women and saw herself. Scared. Uncertain. Desperate to prove that they were more than what the world saw. "I'm not going to lie to you," she said. "This is hard. Harder than anything you've ever done. You're going to fail. You're going to want to quit. You're going to have days where you wonder why you ever started." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But here's the thing about failure. It's not the opposite of success. It's the path to success. Every mistake teaches you something. Every setback makes you stronger. And if you keep going, if you refuse to give up, you will fly." After the class, one of the students approached her. A girl named Jessie, 19 years old, with scared eyes and calloused hands. "Ms. Brooks, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When you were building Phoenix, did you ever really believe you could do it? Or were you just pretending?" Elena thought about the question. About all the nights she had lain awake, certain she was going to fail. About the morning she had almost sold Phoenix for scrap, convinced she was wasting everyone's time. "I was terrified every single day," she admitted. "But I kept going anyway, because the alternative was giving up, and I couldn't live with that." Jessie nodded slowly. "I don't think I can do this." "You can. You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through." Elena put her hand on Jessie's shoulder. "I know that you're here. I know that you enrolled in this program when everyone in your life probably told you not to. I know that you're scared because anyone with sense would be scared." She squeezed gently. "That's enough. That's more than enough." Jessie's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Show me. Come to class tomorrow and the day after that and every day until you're ready to fly. That's how you thank me." That night, Elena made a decision. She called Tyler. "I've been thinking about what you said, about being part of Hope's life." Silence on the other end. Then, "I'm willing to try, slowly. Supervised visits at first. If those go well, we'll talk about next steps." "Elena, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just show up. Be present. Prove that you meant what you said." She took a breath. "And Tyler, this is Hope's one chance to have a father. Don't waste it." The first visit happened on a Sunday afternoon. Grace insisted on being there. So did Jackson. Elena wasn't sure if she wanted protection or witnesses, but either way, she wasn't doing this alone. Tyler arrived with a stuffed elephant and a terrified expression. Hope was 8 months old now, crawling and curious, and completely unaware of the significance of this moment. "Can I hold her?" Tyler asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elena hesitated. Then she lifted Hope and placed her in Tyler's arms. The baby studied this stranger with solemn eyes. Then she reached up and grabbed his nose. Tyler laughed, a surprised sound that seemed to catch him off guard. "She's beautiful." "She is. She looks like you." "Everyone says she looks like my father." Tyler was quiet, watching his daughter explore his face with tiny fingers. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "Thank you for giving me this chance." Elena didn't respond. She was watching Hope, watching for any sign of distress or discomfort. But the baby seemed content, curious about this new person who held her so carefully. Maybe it would work. Maybe Tyler really had changed. Or maybe it would all fall apart, and Elena would be left to pick up the pieces again. Only time would tell. The visits continued. Once a week, at first, then twice. Tyler was consistent, punctual, present. He never missed a scheduled time. Never made excuses. Never fell back into old patterns. Elena watched him with hope, looking for cracks in the facade. But she only saw a man trying desperately to connect with the daughter he had almost lost. "I don't trust him," Jackson said one evening. "I don't either." "Then why are you letting this happen?" Elena looked at Hope, playing on the barn floor with the same wrench Elena had used to take apart Phoenix piece by piece. "Because she deserves the chance to know her father, even if he doesn't deserve the chance to know her." May brought the Foundation's first anniversary and a second helicopter. They named her Aurora after the dawn. Sophia found a pilot, a retired Air Force veteran named Marcus Williams, who had the same name as Elena's father and the same steady calm. "Feels like fate," Marcus Williams said when he heard the story. "How could I not join?" The expansion meant more rescues, more lives, saved more proof that Phoenix's legacy was real. Elena kept a count in her father's journal. By May 15th, they had saved 11 people. 11 families who would have buried loved ones if not for a pregnant woman's impossible dream. But success brought new challenges. Harold Mercer had not forgotten his defeat. He couldn't touch Elena legally anymore, but he found other ways to make her life difficult. Whisper campaigns, anonymous complaints, rumors that spread through Cedar Falls like poison. "Just ignore him," Catherine advised. "He's a small man with small weapons." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one being called a fraud and a gold digger behind your back." "No, I'm the one who spent 20 years being called worse." Catherine's voice was sharp. "You think I got where I am by caring what people said? You think your father cared? He built Phoenix while half this town laughed at him. He died knowing he was right. That's what matters, not the whispers." Elena knew her aunt was right, but the whispers still hurt. June brought heat and something unexpected. Elena was doing paperwork when Sophia rushed in face pale. "You need to see this." She held out her phone. On the screen was a news article with a headline that made Elena's blood run cold. "Father of helicopter hero files for custody of infant daughter." Elena grabbed the phone, read the article once, twice, 3 times, each reading making less sense than the last. Tyler had filed for joint custody. After everything he had said about not wanting custody, after all his promises about earning trust slowly, he had lied. Elena's hands were shaking when she called him. "What did you do?" "Elena, let me explain." "Explain what you filed for custody, after everything you said." "My lawyer advised me to establish legal standing. It doesn't mean I want to take her from you. It's just protection." "Protection? You signed away your rights. You have no rights." "I know. But the lawyer said, if I want to be part of her life long term, I need legal recognition. Otherwise, you could cut me off at any time." "Maybe I should cut you off. Maybe that's exactly what you deserve." "Elena, please. This isn't an attack. I'm not trying to take hope away from you." "Then what are you trying to do?" Silence. "Then, I'm trying to make sure I can't be erased. I spent 2 years being nothing to my daughter. I can't go back to that. I won't." Elena ended the call without another word. She drove straight to the barn, found Jackson working on Aurora's engine, and told him everything. His face went hard. "I knew it. I knew he couldn't be trusted." "What do I do?" "You fight. You get a lawyer, you file a response, and you make sure that man never takes your daughter anywhere." "But what if he's telling the truth? What if this really is just legal protection?" Jackson set down his wrench. "Do you believe that?" Elena thought about Tyler's face when he held hope, about the tears in his eyes, about all the visits where he had been present, patient, everything he promised to be. "I don't know what I believe anymore." The custody battle consumed the next 3 months. Lawyers, depositions, character witnesses. Elena's life became an open book, examined and dissected by strangers who would decide her daughter's fate. Tyler's lawyer was aggressive, painting Elena as unstable, obsessive, a woman who had risked her pregnancy for a helicopter. Elena's lawyer pushed back, presenting evidence of Tyler's abandonment, his signed termination of rights, his 18-month absence. The Foundation suffered. Elena couldn't focus on rescues when her daughter's future was at stake. Sophia took over daily operations. Maya and Catherine kept the training program running. Jackson maintained the helicopters. Everyone rallied around her. But Elena felt more alone than ever. The hearing was scheduled for September 10th. The night before, Elena sat with Hope in the barn. The baby was walking now, toddling from tool to tool, exploring the space that had shaped her mother's life. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Elena whispered, "I want you to know something. You were never a mistake. You were never unwanted. You were the reason I kept going when everything fell apart." Hope looked up at her mother with Marcus Brooks's stubborn eyes. "I love you, baby girl. No matter what any judge says, you're mine, and I'm yours. Forever." The hearing lasted 2 days. Elena sat in the courtroom watching Tyler present himself as a changed man. Watching his lawyer argue that every child deserves 2 parents. Watching the judge take notes with an expression that revealed nothing. When it was Elena's turn, she told her story. Not the sanitized version. The real one. The fear. The desperation. The night she had almost given up. The morning she had decided that her daughter deserved a mother who finished what she started. "Mr. Reynolds abandoned his daughter before she was born," her lawyer concluded. "He signed away his parental rights voluntarily. Now, after Ms. Brooks has built a life, a foundation, a future for this child he wants back in. That's not parental love. That's opportunism." The judge retired to consider her decision. 3 days later, the ruling came. Elena sat in her lawyer's office, hands clenched, heart pounding. "The court has denied Mr. Reynolds's petition for custody," the lawyer read. "His voluntary termination of parental rights is upheld. However, the court recognizes his efforts toward rehabilitation and recommends continued supervised visitation at Ms. Brooks' discretion." Elena let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "It's over. It's over. Hope is yours. Legally, permanently, irrevocably." That night, Elena held her daughter and cried. Not from sadness, not from relief, from something deeper. The knowledge that she had fought for this child with everything she had, and she had won. Tyler called the next day. "I want you to know I'm not going to fight the ruling. The ruling says you can't fight it. I know. But I could appeal. Drag this out for years." He paused. "I'm not going to do that." "Why not?" "Because you were right. About all of it. I said I wanted to earn trust slowly, and then I did the exact opposite. I let my lawyer convince me that legal protection was more important than keeping my word." His voice was heavy. "I'm sorry, Elena. I'm sorry I put you through this." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know if I can forgive you." "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking if I can still see her. On your terms. Whatever you decide." She thought about Hope. About the way she had started recognizing Tyler's face reaching for him when he arrived. About the relationship that had been building before the lawyers got involved. "I'll think about it." It wasn't yes, but it wasn't no either. And sometimes that was enough. October brought the first frost, and a visitor Elena never expected. She was in the barn alone when she heard footsteps behind her. "Elena Brooks." She turned. A woman stood in the doorway, 40-something, professional clothes clipboard in hand. "I'm Dr. Patricia Holloway. I'm with the National Aviation Heritage Foundation. Can I help you?" Dr. Holloway smiled. "Actually, I think we can help each other. I've been following your story for months. The helicopter, the rescues, the foundation you've built." She stepped forward. "We want to honor Phoenix, include her in our permanent collection, and we want to honor you." Elena blinked. "I'm not sure I understand." "We're presenting you with the Spirit of American Aviation Award. It's given to individuals who embody the pioneering spirit of flight." Dr. Holloway's smile widened. "You're the first woman to receive it in 30 years, and the first single mother ever." Elena looked at Phoenix, at the helicopter that had started as rust and dreams, at her father's legacy now recognized by people who had never known his name. "When?" "The ceremony is in December, Washington, D.C." Dr. Holloway handed her an envelope. "Everything you need is inside. Congratulations, Ms. Brooks. You've earned this." After she left, Elena sat in the cockpit for a long time. She thought about her father, who had never lived to see Phoenix fly. She thought about Wyatt, whose dream had started it all. She thought about Jackson and Catherine and Maya and Sophia, and everyone who had believed when believing seemed foolish. And she thought about Hope, who would grow up knowing that her mother had done something impossible. That was the real award, the only one that mattered. The rest was just medal and ceremony, but she would accept it anyway. For all of them. For everyone who had ever been told they couldn't. Because broken things can rise, and sometimes they rise higher than anyone imagined. The flight to Washington, D.C. was the longest of Elena's life. Hope sat in her lap, fascinated by the clouds outside the window. Grace sat beside them, clutching the armrest like the plane might fall apart at any moment. "You've never liked flying," Elena said. "I've never liked being 30,000 feet in the air with nothing but metal between me and the ground." Grace grimaced. "I don't know how you do what you do. I trust the machine, and I trust myself. That's what terrifies me." Elena laughed, but her stomach was churning. In less than 12 hours, she would stand in front of hundreds of people and accept an award she still wasn't sure she deserved. Her father had spent 20 years on Phoenix. Wyatt had dreamed of her before Elena was born. Jackson and Catherine had given everything to make her fly. What had Elena done except refuse to quit? Maybe that's enough, she thought. Maybe that's what matters. The ceremony was held at the National Air and Space Museum. Elena had never been to Washington before. The city overwhelmed her. Too many people, too much noise, too much everything. She felt small and out of place, a mechanic from Montana surrounded by senators and CEOs and people who had never touched a wrench in their lives. "You look terrified," Jackson said. He had flown in that morning wearing a suit that looked like it had been purchased in 1975. "I am terrified." "Good. Means you're paying attention." Catherine appeared beside them, elegant in a way Elena could never manage. "The program says you're speaking for 10 minutes. Do you have your remarks ready?" "I wrote something. I don't know if it's any good." "It's good," Maya said, joining the group. "I helped you edit it, remember?" "That's what worries me." They laughed, but Elena's hands were shaking. She had faced down mountains in the dark, landed on ledges that shouldn't have held her weight, rebuilt a helicopter from nothing but rust and stubbornness. But the thought of speaking to a room full of strangers made her want to run. Hope reached up and grabbed her mother's face with both hands. "Mama." It was one of her first words. She had started saying it 2 weeks ago, and Elena still got emotional every time she heard it. "I'm here, baby girl." Elena kissed her daughter's forehead. "Mama's right here." The ceremony began at 7 o'clock. Elena sat in the front row, Hope on her lap, surrounded by the people who had made Phoenix possible. She listened to speeches about innovation and courage and the American spirit. She watched videos of famous aviators, heard stories of triumph and tragedy, felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. And then Dr. Holloway was at the podium, saying her name. "Ladies and gentlemen, this year's recipient of the Spirit of American Aviation Award represents something rare in our field. Not just technical excellence or pioneering achievement, but something more fundamental. Something we don't celebrate often enough." Dr. Holloway smiled. "She represents the power of refusing to quit." Elena stood on legs that felt like water. She handed Hope to Grace and walked to the stage, each step feeling like a mile. The podium was too tall, the microphone too close, the lights too bright. But she had written her remarks, had practiced them 100 times, and she would deliver them even if her voice shook. 2 years ago, I was pregnant, broke, and standing in front of a rusted helicopter that hadn't flown in 30 years. Her voice echoed through the hall. Everyone told me I was crazy. They were probably right. Laughter rippled through the audience. But that helicopter wasn't just a machine. It was my father's dream. And when he died, that dream almost died with him. Elena paused, gathering herself. I'm not a pilot. I'm not an engineer. I'm a waitress from Montana who learned to fix helicopters from YouTube videos and a dead man's journal. I'm not supposed to be standing here. She looked out at the sea of faces, at Jackson wiping his eyes, at Catherine nodding slowly, at Maya grinning like a proud sister. But here's what I've learned. Dreams don't care about credentials. They don't care about money or connections or whether the world thinks you're qualified. Dreams only care about one thing, whether you're willing to keep going when everything says you should stop. Her voice grew stronger. My father kept going for 20 years. My Aunt Catherine, who I didn't speak to for 16 years because of a family argument, came back and gave everything she had. Jackson Cole, a man who owed my father a debt from 50 years ago, showed up at my barn and refused to leave. Maya Chen, a 19-year-old college dropout, taught herself electronics just to help me. Elena's eyes found her mother holding Hope in her arms. And my daughter, Hope. She was born in the middle of everything. She grew up surrounded by tools and grease and the sound of rotors. She's 18 months old, and she already knows more about helicopters than most adults. She took a breath. This award isn't mine. It belongs to everyone who believed when believing was foolish, everyone who worked when working was hopeless, everyone who refused to let a dream die. She lifted the crystal trophy, feeling its weight. My father named his helicopter Phoenix because he believed that broken things can rise from the ashes. He was right. But it's not just machines that can rise. It's people. It's communities. It's the stubborn, impossible hope that keeps us going when the world tells us to stop. She looked directly into the camera. So if you're watching this and you have a dream that everyone says is impossible, I want you to know something. They're wrong. You're not crazy for believing. You're brave. And if you keep going, if you refuse to give up, you will fly. The applause was deafening. Elena stepped back from the podium, tears streaming down her face. She had done it. She had said what she needed to say. And somewhere she knew her father was listening. The reception afterward was a blur of handshakes and congratulations. Elena smiled and nodded and said thank you so many times, the words lost meaning. But one conversation stood out. One moment that changed everything. A man approached her late 60s military-bearing eyes that had seen things they would never unsee. Ms. Brooks, my name is General Thomas McCarthy, retired Air Force. It's an honor, General. The honor is mine. He shook her hand firmly. I served with your father. Vietnam, 1971. Same unit as Jackson Cole. Elena's breath caught. You knew my father? Knew him. Flew with him. Watched him do things that defied explanation. The general's voice was rough with memory. He saved a lot of lives over there. Never got the recognition he deserved. He never talked about the war. Most of us don't. But I want you to know something. The general leaned closer. What you're doing with Phoenix, with the foundation, it's exactly what Marcus dreamed about. Exactly what he would have wanted. His eyes were wet. He would be so proud of you. I hope you know that. Elena couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. The general squeezed her shoulder. Keep flying, Ms. Brooks. Keep saving lives. That's how we honor the ones we lost. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving Elena shaking. Jackson found her moments later. You okay? I just met someone who knew my father, in Vietnam. Jackson's face changed. General McCarthy. You know him. I know of him. He was our commanding officer. Jackson was quiet for a moment. He's the one who recommended your father for the Silver Star. My father had a Silver Star. He never told you. Jackson shook his head slowly. Your father was the most decorated pilot in our unit. He flew into enemy fire so many times they stopped counting, and every single time he came back. Elena processed this. Her father, the quiet man who fixed engines and read westerns and never raised his voice, had been a war hero, had saved lives, had earned medals he never mentioned. Why didn't he tell me? Because that's not who he wanted to be. He wanted to be your father. Not a hero, just a dad who loved his daughter. Jackson put his hand on her shoulder. That's who he was to you. That's who he wanted to be remembered as. Elena looked at the trophy in her hands, at the legacy she was carrying. Then that's who I'll remember. They flew home the next day. The award sat on Elena's lap, but her mind was elsewhere. On her father. On the secrets he had kept. On the man she was only now beginning to understand. Grace noticed her silence. What are you thinking about? Dad. The things I never knew about him. There's a lot you don't know. A lot he never told anyone. Grace took her hand. But the important things you knew. He loved you. He believed in you. He spent 20 years building something he hoped you would finish. Why didn't he finish it himself? Because life isn't fair. Because cancer doesn't care about dreams. Grace's voice was thick. But maybe that's why you were meant to. Maybe he knew somehow that you would be the one to make Phoenix fly. Elena looked at her sleeping daughter, at the child who had grown up surrounded by her grandfather's legacy. Do you think Hope will remember any of this? She won't remember the details, but she'll remember what matters. Grace smiled. She'll remember that her mother built something impossible, that her mother never gave up. That's the inheritance you're giving her, not money or property. Something better, the knowledge that she comes from people who don't quit. When they landed in Montana, a crowd was waiting. Not just the usual supporters. The whole town. Hundreds of people holding signs, cheering, celebrating a daughter of Cedar Falls who had made good. Elena stepped off the plane and was immediately engulfed. Pete from the hardware store. Maria from the diner. Reverend Wright. Walter Crane. Students from the foundation. Pilots from the rescue service. And standing at the edge of the crowd, watching with uncertain eyes, Tyler. Their gazes met across the chaos. Elena didn't smile, didn't wave, but she didn't look away either. Something had shifted between them. The custody battle had burned away the pretense, the careful dance they had been doing. What remained was raw and real. Two people who had hurt each other, who had failed each other, trying to figure out if there was anything left to save. Later that night, after the celebration had died down, Tyler found her at the barn. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "I watched the speech. It was beautiful. Thank you." They stood in silence, Phoenix looming between them. "I have something for you." Tyler reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "I was going to mail it, but then I thought I should give it to you in person." Elena took the envelope. Inside was a legal document. She read it 3 times before she understood. "You're dropping the visitation claim. I'm removing myself from the equation. Completely." Tyler's voice was steady, but his eyes were not. "You were right, Elena. I don't have the right to be part of her life. I gave that up when I walked out. I can't earn it back with lawyers and court orders." "So you're just giving up?" "I'm letting go. There's a difference." He took a breath. "If Hope wants to know me someday when she's old enough to decide for herself, I'll be here. But until then, I'm stepping back. I'm not going to fight you anymore." Elena stared at him. This wasn't what she expected. Not after everything they had been through. "Why?" "Because I watched your speech tonight. I watched you talk about never giving up, about refusing to quit." Tyler's voice cracked. "And I realized that's not me. I quit when things got hard. I ran when I should have stayed. I'm not the kind of person Hope should learn from." "Tyler, let me finish." He held up a hand. "I've spent 2 years trying to fix what I broke. But some things can't be fixed. Some damage is permanent. The best thing I can do for my daughter is get out of the way and let her be raised by someone who knows how to fight for what matters." Elena felt something unexpected. Not anger, not satisfaction, something softer. "You've changed." "I've tried to. I can see that." They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Elena did something that surprised them both. She reached out and touched his arm. "I don't hate you, Tyler. I used to. but I don't anymore. That's more than I deserve. Probably. She almost smiled. But Hope is going to ask about you someday. And when she does, I want to be able to tell her the truth. That her father made mistakes. That he hurt us. But that he also tried to make it right. That he loved her enough to let her go. Tyler's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep being better. Keep proving that you meant what you said. Elena stepped back. And Tyler, if you ever want to see her really see her, call me. We'll figure it out. Together. He nodded, unable to speak. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Elena watched him go, feeling something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Peace. The foundation grew faster than anyone expected. Within 6 months, they had 3 helicopters and 12 trained pilots. Within a year, they had expanded to cover the entire western half of Montana. The Marcus Brooks Aerial Rescue Foundation was saving an average of 40 lives per year, reaching people in places ambulances couldn't go. Elena stepped back from daily operations, letting Sophia and Marcus Williams handle the logistics. Her role evolved. She became the face of the foundation, the voice that spoke at conferences and fundraisers in schools. She became the person that young girls looked up to, the proof that impossible wasn't a real word. But she never stopped teaching. Every Saturday, she was at the barn working with students, getting her hands dirty. That was where she belonged. Not in boardrooms or on stages. In the place where her father had dreamed, where she had built something from nothing. Jessie, the scared girl from the first class, became her best student. She earned her pilot's license in 18 months and joined the foundation as their youngest pilot. I never thought I'd be here, Jessie said on her first official flight. I never thought I'd be capable of this. I know, Elena replied. That's why you are. Hope grew into a curious, fearless toddler who treated the barn like her personal playground. She knew the names of tools before she knew the names of colors. She could identify helicopter parts before she could count to 20. She followed Elena everywhere, watching, learning, absorbing everything. She's going to be a pilot, Jackson predicted. She's going to be whatever she wants to be, Elena corrected. That's the whole point. On Hope's 2nd birthday, they held a party at the barn. Everyone came. Grace and Catherine Jackson and Maya Sophia and Marcus Williams, Pete and Maria, Reverend Wright, the students and pilots, and everyone who had become family over the past 2 years. Elena stood at the edge of the celebration, watching her daughter smash cake with both hands, and felt something swell in her chest. This was what she had built. Not just a helicopter, not just a foundation, a family, a community, a legacy that would outlast her. Jackson appeared beside her. You did good, kid. We did good. No. Jackson shook his head. This was you, all of it. Your stubbornness, your refusal to quit. We just helped along the way. That's not true. It's absolutely true. Jackson's voice was firm. When you showed up in that barn 2 years ago, pregnant and broke and determined to rebuild a helicopter, you knew nothing about. None of us thought you'd succeed. We hoped, we believed, but we didn't know. He put his hand on her shoulder. You taught us something, Elena. You taught us that impossible is just a word people use when they're scared to try. Elena leaned her head against his shoulder. I couldn't have done it without you. Maybe, maybe not. But here's what I know. Jackson's voice dropped. Your father would be proud. Wyatt would be proud. And I'm proud. Prouder than I've ever been of anything. Elena couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. That night, after everyone had gone home, Elena sat in the cockpit of Phoenix one last time. Hope was asleep in her carrier, strapped into the co-pilot seat. The barn was quiet, except for the soft sound of breathing and the creak of settling metal. Elena ran her fingers over the controls, feeling every scratch, every dent, every mark of the journey they had taken together. "We did it, Dad," she whispered. "We really did it." She pulled her father's journal from her pocket, the same journal she had found on that first day. She opened it to the last page where Marcus Brooks had written his final words. "Phoenix isn't just about flying. She's about proving that broken things can rise. Build her, fly her, and remember that the sky doesn't care how many times you fall. It only cares if you get back up." Elena picked up a pen and added her own words beneath his. "I fell 100 times. I got back up 101. And now I'm flying. Thank you, Dad. For everything. For the dream. For the helicopter. For believing I could finish what you started. I love you. Always." She closed the journal and pressed it to her heart. Outside, the first light of dawn was breaking over the mountains. The same mountains her father had watched from this barn. The same mountains Wyatt had dreamed about. The same mountains that had witnessed everything. Elena looked at her sleeping daughter, at the child who would carry this legacy forward. "You know what, Hope," she said softly. "Someday you're going to ask me how I did all this. How I built a helicopter and started a foundation and saved all those lives." She kissed her daughter's forehead. "And I'm going to tell you the truth. I didn't do it alone. I had help. I had people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I had a father who spent 20 years building a dream and trusted me to finish it." She looked out at the dawn, at the sky that was turning gold and pink and orange. "But mostly I had you. You gave me a reason to keep going when I wanted to quit. You gave me strength when I had none left. You made me brave enough to fly." Hope stirred in her sleep, reaching out with tiny fingers. Elena took her daughter's hand and held on tight. "Some stories begin in the sky," she whispered. "Others begin on the ground, but the ones that matter, the ones that last, they begin in the heart. In the stubborn, impossible belief that we can be more than what the world tells us we are." She stood up, lifted Hope from her carrier, and walked to the barn door. The sun was rising over Cedar Falls, over the foundation she had built, over the helicopters that would save lives today and tomorrow, and for years to come. Elena held her daughter close and stepped into the light. Behind her, Phoenix gleamed in the morning sun, waiting for her next flight. Some people spend their whole lives searching for their purpose. Elena Brooks found hers in a rusted helicopter, a dead man's journal, and the cry of a newborn baby. She had been broken. She had been abandoned. She had been told 1,000 times that she couldn't do what she was trying to do. But she had done it anyway. Because that's what broken things do. They rise.